Hi there, Evan Lawson here. I am a composer, I am a conductor, I am an artist, I am a musician, I am a marketer. I do lots of different things. I wear lots of different hats. And yeah, one of those hats is I am a musician. So I have not a lot of music, funnily enough, in my house, like printed music. I live in a one-bedroom flat with my partner, so we don't have a lot of space. So I don't have a particularly exhaustive collection of printed music. So I thought it might be cool to do a little video about the music that I do have and to talk a little bit about the works that I have in my collection, because I've had to make a choice of like, I can't have a complete collection of Mozart symphonies or Haydn symphonies or Beethoven symphonies or whatever, because I just don't have the space. So it's like, if I ever need to conduct those works, I will buy the score or I will, source it for that particular gig. So my collection has a little bit of like stuff like that, like things I've sourced that is more standard repertoire, but mostly I keep things that are probably a little bit more unusual or that people might not know of. So I'm going to go from A to Z, A to Z, my God. No, we're not saying the American Z. A to Z of my scores in my collection, composer by composer. So here we go, without any further ado. Number A. Okay, the very beginning of my collection, number A, of course, I have my collection alphabetized by composer. We have a composer named Thomas Adès. Adès, I'm not sure, people pronounce it all different ways. Anyway, one of my absolute favorite composers. I've had the pleasure of seeing him conduct his works in Melbourne over 10 years ago now, a number of times. Did an amazing performance of like one act of one of his operas, The Tempest, that I really love. The Tempest is my favorite work of his. I think that's an incredible piece. And if you're looking at, if you're a composer and you're interested in text setting in English, absolutely look at The Tempest. It's Shakespearean, obviously the Shakespeare play, beautifully set. Other work that I adore is his first opera, which I have here, which is Powder Her Face. So this is one score that I have, is the piano score for Powder Her Face, which is an absolutely wild and incredible piece. So do check that one out. The recording is amazing. The other piece of his that I have in my collection is his string quartet Acadiana. This is a really gorgeous work. I use it a lot as a reference for string writing. It's very much my style, my vibe. So I often use it to refer to like certain harmonics that he uses that I really like. But the piece itself is fascinating. It goes on this kind of wild ride across multiple movements. I think there's like 7 movements or something. And like in the middle of it is this song that's almost like a nostalgic old kind of jazz standard or something that kind of bubbles up out of these sort of interesting textures. He's a really interesting composer. So yeah, Thomas Adès, look him up. Oh my God. Okay, so that was A. That's all the composers I have that are A. Now we're getting on to the Bs, and I think the Bs is like a third of my collection. So bear with me as I go through the first chunk of Bs in my collection. So of course I've got to have some Bach in my collection, right? You cannot be a composer or a musician of Western art music and not have any Bach. I only have 2 books of Bach because there's just so much, right? I often, if I want to study a certain work, sorry, scores are going everywhere. I would look it up online and just sort of study it online. But in terms of works that I have in my collection, I have the St. Matthew Passion, iconic work, of course, orchestrally brilliant, the choral writing incredible. It's also really important, I think, because of the recitative aspect of it. So St. Matthew Passion, got to be in your collection. The other thing I have that is really interesting, and I found this in a op shop, a secondhand shop, is this. It's a melodic index of the works of Bach, compiled by May DeForest McCall. And it is this incredible book where they've like, sorry, the scores are revolting behind me. This person, May DeFrost, has gone through and archived like all the melodies of Bach's pieces. Like, fascinating. I haven't even like touched the surface of this thing, and it's like, why do you have it? Like, there is a preface that I probably should read to figure out like why this person did this. Fascinating. Okay, so Bach, we've got to plow on because there's a lot of Bs. An amazing Australian composer, Don Banks. We have a big award here in Australia Composition Music Award. That is the Don Banks Award. He was a very prominent composer in the middle of the 20th century. This is a work from 1966, his trio for horn, piano, and violin. So it sort of follows on in that unique genre that Brahms kind of invented. And it fits into that like Australian 60s, 70s world that I really find fascinating. That's like Don Banks, another composer would be like Richard Mille. They have like atonal, very sort of free harmonically. Don Banks was also a jazz musician, so he's got like a lot of peppering of jazz vibes in his music. Definitely a composer to look into. I only have that piece. It's the only piece in my collection. Very important composer for me is Bartok. I have 2 Bartok scores. Music for Strings, Percussion, and Celeste, which is, again, for string writing, a really useful resource. And the Concerto for Orchestra. Concerto for Orchestra is a bloody amazing piece, and everyone should know it and listen to it. But the other thing is, if you're a conductor, like say you're an emerging conductor out there and you're looking to do some auditions in Europe, you will often see it as a work that is on audition prep. So that is why I have the Concerto for Orchestra. An amazing piece. Okay, next up, we get to Beethoven, where I only have 2 scores by Ludwig van Beethoven. Like I said before, if I want to study kind of the bigs, the big boys, Bach, Beethoven, Brahms, I kind of download it and I study it online. I know that's really, really bad and that's really, really terrible, but that's what I do. Sue me. The scores I do have, Beethoven 9, because I have conducted it. And it is a really good reference work, orchestra, choir, balancing, you know, a staple of the orchestral pieces. But the other piece that I have that I adore that, you know, funnily enough, people don't really know that often by Beethoven is his Missa Solemnis. And I have this beautiful score. I think I must have, again, a secondhand shop or an op shop or something. Here you go, it says $10 in the front page. It's just this beautiful little study score, beautifully bound. It's embossed on the front. And this piece of music, I think I got the score from the op shop or whatever, and I would have looked up the recording off it because I would have seen it and been like, oh, I don't know that Beethoven. And it was one of those pieces that changed my life. Like, it's huge, it's monumental, it's multi movements, choir, big orchestra. There's this movement with this beautiful violin solo that just, you know, moved me to tears. Like, can strongly recommend this piece. And it is one from a study perspective that, again, that orchestra choir stuff, which can take a very sensitive hand orchestration wise, really useful to have in your collection. And the next work I have is a score that I purchased and spent a lot of money on. It's a newish opera, only a couple of years old, by the British composer George Benjamin, called Written on Skin. And this work, I think you can watch it all online. I think there's a production from might be the original from Aix-en-Provence or Royal Opera House, somewhere like that. Listen to it. It's a remarkable piece of music. He is a composer that I adore, British composer that I just adore his sound world. There's like a glass harmonica and like maybe like a viola da gamba or something in this piece. It just has this incredible sound world, full orchestra, incredible vocal writing, and it is a monster of a work, of course, 3-act opera. So Written on Skin, and just the works of George Benjamin, look them up. Okay, the next set of Bs, oh my god, it's like everything, it was so hard to get the next set of Bs out. Like, it's nearly, like I said, a third of the collection. It's crazy. Okay, composer that I put on such a pedestal for so many reasons, partly because he just seems like he was trolling sometimes. That's Boulez. And I mean that in like the nicest possible way. Like he like in his younger years, he just said some crazy stuff about the classical music industry and the world, and like basically wanting to like change everything. It was very just like enfant terrible kind of vibes of just like completely ripping everyone to shreds. But anyway, Le Marteau sans Maitre is this beautiful, very kind of important work of the 20th century for, I think it's contralto. It's like a low voice, mezzo soprano, something like that, and a small ensemble that's like guitar, percussion, flute, violin, viola, you know, and it's an incredible work. It's like if you're a student of 20th century classical music, you would know that there's important work by Arnold Schoenberg, Pierre Lunaire, again, voice and ensemble. This is kind of like, you know, however many decades later, 4 or 5 decades later, the sort of next iteration of that thinking, chamber music, really tight writing for just smaller ensembles rather than orchestra, a vocal work that isn't necessarily like voluptuous and big. I mean, there are moments that are very voluptuous, I think, but like if you listen to it, you might be, and you've never heard this sort of music before, it might come as a bit of a shock. But yeah, vocal music that isn't kind of romantic, I guess. So Boulez. It's the only Boulez I have in my collection, which is also rare because I talk about and love Boulez a lot. But yeah, amazing piece. Next up is from Boulez, like, see what I mean? Is Bernstein, Leonard Bernstein. So Bernstein, and I admit this is out of alphabetical order now. I don't know, the Boulez just pulled out of there. The Bernstein, I've got the Overture de Candide and the Symphonic Dances from West Side Story. Two amazing orchestral works. He knew the orchestra inside out. I refer to them a lot. Like, I mean, West Side Story, the orchestration is immaculate. You know, the percussion writing is really useful. The brass writing is really handy to refer to. For me, as I'm not a brass player, so it's like the thing I know the least about is brass writing. But they're just damn good pieces. You know, they're great ones to just pull out and listen to and study because they're just good fun. And then I've got... So the next two I'm going to pair together, and they kind of go with the Boulez quite well, which is funny, all these bees. I'm obsessed with the bees. Luciano Berio folk songs and Harrison Birtwistle Tragedia. So all kind of a similar generation almost, all around the same time, both kind of very influenced by Boulez and knew him. The Berio folk songs are, again, like the Boulez piece, like a standard 20th century, like, you need to know this piece. He takes a whole load of folk songs from various parts of the world, Italy, France, Azerbaijan. The Azerbaijan one is quite funny because there's some story, his wife, Kathy Berberian, who's the singer that he wrote it for, like some story about like she heard a record of this song and like transcribed it by ear from this Azerbaijani recording or something. And they went and performed it in Azerbaijan. All the people were like, what are you singing? You're just like making up all these words. So yeah, quite funny. Anyway, not if you're love of that language, I'm sure. But yeah, a beautiful piece, harp, a couple of woodwinds, a couple of strings. And it's fascinating to see how he sets these folk songs in the ensemble and sort of brings a 20th century, you know, kind of interesting flair to them. Tragedia by Birtwistle. Birtwistle is one of my heroes. His way that he conjures rhythmic structures out of small details and brings bigger structures out from smaller structures and vice versa, like brings small details out from bigger things is incredible. And the way he can take just a small melodic motive or relationship between color instruments and draws it out into a piece is amazing, particularly in his early works that can appear to be really stark, but once you sort of study them and understand them, you see that there's kind of this like motion, this constant motion and interaction rhythmically and texturally going on under the surface. He's an absolute genius. Again, why I only have one of his scores, but I only have one of his scores. The next one is Carmen by Georges Bizet. It's the vocal score to Carmen. The reason I have it is it's the first opera that I ever conducted. So it still has all the cuts and all the notes in it from when I first did it. Shout out to the amazing crew. Olivia Cranwell was our Carmen when we did it. Just like great memories, also really some really traumatic memories, because if anyone's conducted an opera out there, it is bloody hard to do. And Carmen, a staple of the repertoire, and damn hard to do. So Carmen, that's why I have that. Love that work though, adore. Next up is a work that I conducted rather recently. It is the Brahms Third Symphony. Out of all his symphonies, it is, as a conductor, one of the hardest. There's a reason why, again, if you're an aspiring conductor out there, look at it, learn it. It appears in auditions, it appears in masterclasses, because it's got lots of really difficult, particularly the first movement, difficult conducting things. Is it in 3? Is it in 2? Do you need to subdivide here? Do you not? Blah, 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 blah. So it's a work that I constantly go back to. There's a possibility that I'm conducting it later in the year. So curious to return to this. It might not be the last you hear of the Brahms Third Symphony. And the other Brahms I have is the Tragic Overture. Again, I did it last year in Japan. a really excellent piece. I would say to any beginner conductors, this is a really good one if you're looking for something for your recital. You know, you want something that can show fast stuff, slow stuff, manipulation of tempos. There's some really fun moments. You can really like draw the tempo out and get quite schmaltzy with it. It's a really good piece. So Tragic Overture. Also the Academic Overture is another good one, but I don't have the score for that. Haha. We then move on to a composer that is maybe the one that I have the most scores of, possibly, which is Benjamin Britten. So the Britten I have are the 4C interludes from Peter Grimes. I have the Serenade for tenor horn and strings. I then have a vocal score to Death in Venice. I then have a full score. Yeah, full score for Curlew River. Fascinating opera, and a full orchestral score, again, another one that I spent a lot of money on and I adore, is Britten's Midsummer Night's Dream. Beautiful opera. Again, when I was talking about Adès, I was talking about English text setting. If you want to learn, if you want to understand better how to set English in music, because it is difficult compared to a lot of the other languages, Britten is a master. And this opera particularly, again, I think the Shakespeare ones are really useful to study because they have to make cuts to them. First of all, so you have to understand, like, when you read it compared to the play, you're like, oh, okay, they had to make that cut for that reason and make that fit there, and it's interesting from a structural perspective. The other thing that is useful about the Shakespeare ones is obviously the language isn't necessarily our common language now, and with singing, it has to be very direct. You know, you have to cut out a lot of the kind of extraneous stuff. Not to say that there's extraneous stuff in Shakespeare, but from a musical perspective, you have to just kind of get to the context of the sentence of what the character is saying. So I find Midsummer Night's Dream a really useful referral for that. But any of these Britten works. Curlew River is such a weird piece. He went to Japan. He got inspired by Japanese no theatre. I've actually was the musical director on a production of this about 10 years ago. You know, it's harp, it's a little small ensemble harp, violin, or viola, I think, flutes, percussion. The singers have to coordinate off percussion. Things aren't really conducted. They're just kind of it's this sort of open aleatoric thing. It's a really fascinating piece and worth having a listen to. Curlew River. Death in Venice is the work of Britten's that I love the most because I love the source material and I love the opera. I love the opera as well, but there's just something about the source material that's fascinating. Another incredibly well set score. I guess the difference is that it has an original libretto based on the book. So it doesn't have that challenge I was talking about with the Shakespeare. But definitely an opera that doesn't get a lot of attention, but definitely I would strongly recommend you have a listen to it. And then, as I said, the Britten Serenade, another excellent vocal work, you know, a standard 20th century piece that people love and adore, and, you know, you should know if you don't know it. And the 4C interludes, a great little piece. If you have like a youth orchestra or maybe a community orchestra, if you've got the forces for it, a great work, fun to play. It has everything in it. From an orchestration perspective, he does a lot of mystical things in this piece, you know, doublings that you don't expect. The string writing is really, really clear and really, really crystalline. So would strongly recommend. So yes, Britten. Love Britten. I have, obviously, a lot of Britten in my collection. And there are scores going everywhere. Okay, next up I have two completely contrasting works. Anton Bruckner's Ninth Symphony, Seventh Symphony. I don't actually know why I have this. I have it in my collection. I don't even know if I've studied it. I don't even know if I've ever listened. It's a composer that I have a lot of gaps in my knowledge about. So love him, just never really given him enough time. But Bruckner 7, I should listen to that. And contrasting with that is Jason Robert Brown's Songs for a New World. So you'll start to notice in my collection, I have quite a bit of musical theatre scores. That primarily came from when I was a teenager. I wanted to be a musical theatre performer. I was a musical theatre performer. I performed in musicals. And as a composer, I wrote a lot of musical theatre. So I wrote opera and I wrote vocal music, but I really wanted to write musicals. That's kind of changed. I'm not really I'd like to write one day, like I'm interested, but it's not really like my main focus. I really, at university, focused on orchestral music, concert music, art music. But I've always had a love for musical theatre, and I think it's really important for people who write vocal music to have an understanding about musical theatre from a scoring perspective. They do really well at scoring things clearly. They're often writing for actors who might not necessarily have the musical training. So it's useful from that perspective of creating a really clear, easy to digest vocal score. It's also really useful to play and study vocal music like this and compare it with how it's orchestrated, because in musical theatre, more often than not, Jason Robert Brown, I think, does some of his own orchestrations, but more often than not, they bring in an orchestrator. So from an orchestration perspective, it's a cool studying thing to see, okay, how did they get from this vocal score to the full iteration? So I find that really interesting. And then I write a lot of opera, and so again, it's about writing a vocal score that can communicate everything that the music needs to communicate to the singers, to the pianist, to the director. And it's a document that isn't just about the musical vision, but it's also about the dramatic vision and that kind of the way that an orchestral score needs to communicate so much information in a certain way, vocal scores have to in a very different way, because you're dealing with lighting designers or sound designers or whatever. So yes, vocal scores you'll see in my collections a lot. Why this work? Well, Jason Robert Brown writes really great vocal music. He writes bangers, absolute bangers of songs. Stars in the Moon, if you've never heard it, is the most beautiful, wonderful song that just tells a brilliant story in 4 minutes or however long it is. He's a great storyteller through music. So yeah, Jason Robert Brown. Okay, C, Very Lonely Little One Piece by Elliott Carter, which seems a bit funny. So many great composers that have a surname starting with C, but all I have is his Canon for 3 in Memoriam Igor Stravinsky. This is a fascinating little piece that I think I found somewhere cheap, it would just been a little, here we go, has the price on it, $10 at a store in Europe. I bought it in Europe, and I probably just saw it and just went, cool. Love Elliott Carter. He's a really, really amazing composer. He wrote so much music. He lived to be, 150,000 years old or something, and he passed away relatively recently. American composer. Great little piece. It's open scoring. So the parts in it have, a B flat part or a C part. So you could do it with clarinets, trumpets. So yeah, for my Ensemble Forest collective, we've done it a number of times because it's useful to just have a little short piece, a little trio that's open scored for multiple instruments. So Elliott Carter. Shame I don't have any more of his scores. That's a composer I would like to collect a few more scores of. Okay, let's move on to D, which is a really, really eclectic bunch in here. So I have got, firstly, a vocal score to Peter Maxwell Davies' opera The Lighthouse, which I conducted a couple of years ago with BK Opera. Shout out to them and our amazing crew. Absolutely wild and wacky opera. 3 singers for it, 3 male singers that living in this lighthouse in the 19th century, and there's this monster thing that takes over. If you've seen, there's that crazy film with William Dafoe and what's his face from Vampire Guy. It's a very similar vibe where it's this psychological thing of them being trapped in this lighthouse in the 19th century and the machinations that go on between the two of them. This is a trio in this version. It is a wild, absolutely cool piece, worth looking into, but I have the vocal score for that. We did it with piano, we didn't do it with a band, so I conducted it from that, and it was bloody hard to conduct, let me tell you. Another English composer, and another C piece, Frederick Delius, C Drift. This is a really beautiful work. It's baritone, orchestra, maybe choir, maybe just baritone solo. Yep, no choir. I would have just found this in a shop. There you go, $15. I love that. I love when I'm looking through scores, I won't, if I'm in a secondhand shop or an op shop and I find a pile of scores, there's Mozart Quintet, whatever, I'm probably not going to get that. But if I see something like this, like a Delius or Boulez or something, I'll definitely buy it because it'll be, rare. There might be a rare recording. Some of the scores which we'll get to in this conversation, there are no recordings at all. I found the score and I can't find any recordings, which is really interesting. There are recordings of this. A beautiful composer. I've always liked Delius. His orchestration, he has this kind of beautiful, light, shimmery quality to his music, and this sort of almost twiddly-dee English folky thing that he uses just enough to not annoy me. But so yeah, Delius, he's a composer worth looking into. Wrote a lot of music that people don't often play much. He's sort of out of vogue. Very useful for those of you who may have community orchestras, because he's a 20th century composer that wrote music, a lot of like shorter works for not giant orchestras that are reasonably straightforward to play. So he's a composer worth keeping in the back of your mind if that is something that you do. The next work I have, again, I don't think I've ever listened to a recording of this piece, but it's a really fascinating score. I think I got it like cheap in a shop somewhere. And it's a composer, James Dillon, who, excuse me if I'm wrong, might be a Scottish composer. And it's a work for double choir. So from a scoring perspective, it's got this giant choir, and it's really complicated, a lot of complicated time signatures, and it's like, there's a lot going on in this piece. So it's just a useful score to refer to when writing kind of complicated choral stuff. Then we move on to the music of Brett Dean, quite a well-known Australian composer who I've had the fortunate enough to know personally and to have received feedback, mentorship from him. Amazing composer, huge shout out to Brett. So I have a number of his works that I really adore. Cats and Sprats, which is a choir work, again, very complicated. It's a mixed double choir piece. So it's from that scoring perspective of choral music, which I find really hard, communicating choral music in a clear way. Great to refer to that. And then two works that are super influential for me, scoring a whole range of things. Carlo, which is a work for string orchestra and like sampler and electronics. And then a work called Beggars and Angels, a massive orchestral piece, which I remember hearing him conduct when I was at university and being blown away by it. So I often refer to these for various things. Carlo's really useful because, again, it's like the Adès. It's full of so many really interesting string techniques, harmonics. Brett is a viola player by trade, so he knows his string writing. So it's a really useful work in that respect, and it's just a damn good piece of music. Beggars and Angels, also a damn good piece of music. Massive orchestral work. Big giant orchestra, but it's adapted from a solo viola piece. So it's also really interesting from an orchestration perspective. And I've tried this before, taking a little solo work and trying to orchestrate it out big. And Brett knows orchestration. He knows architecture really well. So, and he's now writing like amazing operas. So like listening to this sort of big orchestral work, very cool. So can strongly recommend studying that. Next up is a composer very close to my heart, which is Debussy Nocturnes and La Mer, two like classic works for the library that, people should have. I have them because I think I conducted La Mer at university, and the Nocturnes, I think I just got this score cheap, but both beautiful works. I mean, immaculate orchestration. I will say about La Mer is that I wrote a work called The Sea, which La Mer is French for the sea, which was an opera. And so I liked this, and it was actually based on an episode from Debussy's life, though it's not specific in the opera. Like we didn't talk about the opera that way. But here's a curious little fact for you that the work is based on a moment from Debussy's life. And so I was using La Mer as a sort of reference point for my work. And funnily enough, going back to the Britten of the 4 sea interludes, there's 3 interludes in the sea, which I want to write and call it 3 sea interludes. That'd be my version of the Britten. Ha ha ha, funny jokes. This is a very curious piece, and I think I found it for $2 in a shop somewhere. George Dreyfus, Reflections in a Glass House, an image of Captain James Cook for speaker, children's chorus and orchestra. This is one of those handwritten scores. I've met George Dreyfus a number of times. If you're from Melbourne and you're a musician, chances are you've met George Dreyfus. Chances are you've heard stories about George Dreyfus, some infamous stories that I'm not going to go into. But George has an incredible legacy in the Australian music scene. And so, I don't think I've listened to a recording of this piece. This might be one of the pieces where it's been hard to find one. But I really like works with speaker in it. So it would be cool to study that because I want to write a work that has a speaker role in it. Next up in my Ds is another Melbourne composer, Kim Alexandra Dillon, who I have had the chance to know for over 10 years. We went to university together. She writes absolutely impeccable, incredible music, and wrote this work, Die Psalmata, which Forest Collective, my ensemble, did the world premiere of, conducted by Elliot Geiger, and I conducted this piece a couple of years ago. We remounted it with Forest Collective, and it's an incredible work, large ensemble, baritone solo, commenting on text by Kierkegaard, an incredible work. Kim transitioned over the past couple of years, and the work is really explores her transition and her sense of self and sense of identity. Deeply moving work. If you get the chance, if it ever gets done, I must do this work again in my life. It is absolutely brilliant. Huge shout out to Steve Marsh, who sang it. Great piece of music. Check out Kim Dillon. She's got a album coming out soon, I think. So keep your eyes posted for that. And the next two are Dvorak. I love Dvorak. There's something about the Central European, Czech, Slovak sound that I really like. The elegance of it. There's a shimmery quality that I really like. And I got to conduct a program reasonably a couple of years ago of Dvorak 8 and Song to the Moon from his opera Rusalka. Incredible opera composer that you should know about. Okay, now we move on to the letter E. And I've got a nice mixed bag of pieces here as well. Okay, first up, Elgar. I have two works by Elgar in my collection. The Dream of Gerontius, and his Second Symphony. Both amazing pieces. Dream of Gerontius is one of those pieces that, like, I think I've only heard it played in Melbourne maybe once in my lifetime, and I unfortunately didn't make it to the gig. But really, really fascinating piece. Really, really cool. Again, another chorus orchestra one that's really useful to kind of understand that balance. And I think Elgar is an interesting one because, like, we often think of Elgar for the famous works, which are beautiful, Enigma, Variations, Cello Concerto, but like the symphonies, he's not kind of put on one of those pedestals of like a great symphonist, but like the Second Symphony, definitely worth a listen. Very tricky. It's a really tricky piece to get your head around the way he navigates texture. They're really thick, dense textures. And yeah, really beautiful composer. Next up, we've got two composers that aren't super well known. One is Peter Eötvös, who recently passed away. I have here his Natasha Trio, which is for a countertenor or soprano, clarinet, violin, piano. We did it with Forest Collective a couple of years ago, and it's an aria from one of his operas, and he's written a lot of operas, which I really, really like. And he was a teacher of mine. So I've got a lot of time for Peter Eötvös, some really beautiful music from Peter Eötvös. And a Swedish composer named Lars Ekström. I think we did the Australian premiere of this piece. It's called Garden of Ice. It's a gorgeous work for a small ensemble that Forest Collective performed like 10 years ago now at the Melbourne Recital Centre. And it's a really great piece, and I'd love to do it again. Lars Ekström is a Swedish composer. I believe he passed away reasonably recently as well. So some composers worth looking into there. I only have one lonely little F. One piece, one composer, Gabriel Fauré, Requiem. It's a beautiful work. I conducted it about 2 years ago. It's just stunning. It is stunning. Like, I don't think there is a movement in it that I would change. There's not a moment I would change. The orchestration is stunningly beautiful. If you're new to like orchestra choir repertoire, give it a listen. Just give it a listen if you haven't listened to it in a while. Like, it is truly just a gorgeous piece of music. So Gabriel Fauré, Requiem. The interesting thing with this, just while I'm thinking about it, read about its orchestration history, because it's like been reorchestrated by him. He like rewrote it like 7 times or something crazy. And there's versions with like violas and trombones and no other orchestra and all these kind of odd combinations that he wrote. But yeah, beautiful work. Okay, on to the Gs. I only have 2 Gs here. One is a work that is really seminal and really important for me, and that is The Light in the Piazza by Adam Guettel. It's a musical from 2006, maybe a bit older, and it's so so heartbreakingly beautiful and contains some gorgeous music. 2005, there you go, it says on the front. He was Richard Rodgers' grandson, Richard Rodgers being the famous composer who worked with Oscar Hammerstein. So Rodgers and Hammerstein, they wrote Oklahoma, Carousel, tons of famous musicals. So he's his grandson. And he wrote just this achingly beautiful musical. All his music I love. Really sophisticated songwriting. He also does some of his own orchestrations, which I also really admire. And so worth listening to. The orchestrations are gorgeous in this. And the next is one that I've had this score for a while. It's Charles Gounod's Faust. An amazing opera that I know bits and pieces of. It's a monster, as you can see. It's the full score, but I've never fully listened to it. So it's on my to listen to list. It says here I got it for $10 from somewhere. So coming up, Charles Gounod's Faust. Okay, the letter H. H for happy. H is also for Haydn. I adore Haydn. You know, I think some people not overlook him, but don't think of him. Do you know what I mean? People don't necessarily go to Haydn, first of all, but Haydn just, oh, what a composer. I have two works in my collection by Haydn. One is this very charming, tatty old score of The Creation, which, you know, everyone adores The Messiah, and The Messiah is a fantastic work. But I love The Creation. And if you can, listen to a recording of the Leonard Bernstein one. It is wild. It's an amazing piece. And the other piece I have of his in my collection is the Miracle Symphony, which is number, I should know this, 96? 96? 96. I have an text of that. I've conducted this a number of times. Great little symphony, really good one for conducting students. If you're looking for a piece out there for your recital that's not too massive, the 96 Miracle Symphony is a really good one. And my other two H's are two composers that I strongly admire. We've got Matthew Hindson, Australian composer. I found this piece. It's called Rush. It's for guitar and string quartet. And I found this in the op shop, which was quite funny, because it just seemed like an odd composer to have discovered a work in the op shop of. Great little piece. So Matthew, thank you for writing this wonderful work. Strongly recommend you looking into it. It's the only score of his I have in my collection. And the other is this monster, which this is a work that if I get to conduct this one day, oh my gosh, I'll be so pleased. It is Hans Werner Henze's piece, Undine. This is a ballet, massive ballet, as you can see. When I first started dating my partner, who trained as a ballet dancer, he mentioned this to me. I didn't know it. I knew of it because I love Henze. But yeah, I don't have any other Henze scores in my collection except for this one. And I listened to it and I was like, I have to have a copy of this. So I ordered it. It is a beast, as you can see. Full orchestra, full ballet, all the bells and whistles. It's a remarkable piece. And again, I feel like it's something that is just not known about and certainly not performed. I don't think it's ever been performed in Australia in my lifetime. Get amongst it. It's a great piece. Really, really cool. Okay, we're on to the letter L, and I've got some really cool pieces here. The first up is a work that I had the absolute pleasure of conducting the premiere of. It's called Cleaving to Seconds, and it's by Dillon Lardelli. Love Dillon's music. We've performed another work with Forest Collective, a duet of his, but this work is a larger piece. It's like strings, percussion, clarinets, flutes, and we did it with the Bendigo International Festival of Exploratory Music, which alas no longer exists, but shout out to the amazing David Chisholm, mentor, dear friend of mine who ran that festival. I had the honour of being resident conductor there 1 year and got to conduct the premiere of this piece. There is a video on my website which you can watch, and it is absolutely fabulous. So Cleaving to Seconds, a really fantastic piece, and look up Dillon's work. He does amazing work, New Zealand composer, shout out to him. And this piece, another really seminal work of mine, I heard it for the first time at the Australian National Academy of Music when I was studying. Ashley Smith played the premiere of it. It's Magnus Lindberg's Clarinet Concerto. He played the Australian premiere of it. And it is the most glittery, beautiful work, impeccable orchestration, masterful balance of like beautiful diatonic harmonies and really crazy weird moments and amazing clarinet writing. I was a clarinetist in a former life, and I adored it, and it was very influential in my first clarinet concerto, my Paean from Hyacinth, which is a clarinet and harp double concerto. So great memories of seeing the premiere of this, and it's been a work that I have loved for a long time, and it's been great getting to know Lindbergh's music. Composer that has had, similar to the Boulez, a huge affinity for me, and yet I seem to only have one score in my collection, and that's Georg Ligeti. I only have this funny piece called Fragment, which I just randomly ordered off the internet one day. It's like this funny combination of instruments. I did it for my master's recital, and I'm so glad that I did, but I've never had the chance to conduct much Ligeti. So hopefully one day I will be able to do particularly the chamber concerto. That's a beast that I want to one day try and get to. But yeah, Fragment, a fascinating piece, and a composer like I can't speak highly of Ligeti. Like impeccable, can't speak more highly of Ligeti. Impeccable, fascinating, written. Yeah. I mean, chamber music is phenomenally incredible. Funny, like a composer that you listen to and you actually want to like laugh out loud to, like Adventures, his piece Adventures. Look it up, it's so funny. Anyway, now a composer that is like very unknown, and I remember hearing a piece of hers on Andrew Ford's music show, which is I think on a Saturday morning. It used to be on a Saturday morning on Radio National when I was a kid, and I heard this piece, and I think it was like the piece was performed and then they interviewed a composer who had studied with this composer, and that's Elizabeth Lutyens. She's kind of credited as bringing the 12-tone technique to the UK, and I found this score somewhere. Here you go, $5.50 it says on it, and it's a chamber concerto for horn and chamber orchestra. I have been able to find a recording of this, though it was pretty tricky to track down. And yeah, Elizabeth Lutyens, really fascinating composer, feminist pioneer. Often all you can read about her is the like, she had children, and isn't it crazy that she was able to manage, the life of being a wife and a composer. But a composer worth looking into. And alas, only one score in my collection. I've realized I left a J out from my previous bit, and that is Janacek, Leo Janacek. I've got one piece by Janacek. If you don't know Janacek, you've got to listen to it. He's a composer I wish I had listened to more. I want to get to more of his music. This piece, I'm not going to attempt pronouncing it. Maybe I'll just put the title up on the screen here because I'm sure my Czech, I will butcher it. But it's a beautiful work for orchestra. It's like a suite of dances, I think. Janacek is an amazing composer. Wrote lots of great operas. So look at Janacek. Okay, we've gotten to M, probably second to B. It might even be bigger than B. There's a lot of M's, all right? A lot of M's. Okay, let's just jump straight in. Martineau, Concerto for Violin and Orchestra, a piano reduction. The reason I have this piece and this version of it, this piano reduction, because there's like, it's weird with Martineau, you struggle to find the right editions. Like he seemed to rewrite stuff and republish stuff all the time. Anyway, I have this version of it that I can never find a full recording of. My version seems to be very different. And I bought it when I was in Bratislava, the first time I went to Bratislava, which is pretty sure where he was from. And I was traveling around Europe and I was trying to buy a score in each city from a composer from that city. And so I bought some Martineau because he was a composer I didn't really know much about. And he's an amazing composer, and he's just got a language that is unlike anyone else. So if you don't know any Martineau, have a listen. This violin concerto, I don't know it well enough because, the recordings don't always seem to match up. I don't know what it is about that. But anyway, that's the Martineau. This piece is a really curious one, Musique pour Rouen. It's by a composer named Bruce Mather, who is a Canadian composer. And I found this score at my university when I was studying. There was like just a pile of free scores. And there it was, this like random string orchestra piece. It was a whole lot of stuff from like the Canadian Music Centre or something. They must have sent stuff to the library that they didn't want. So I pinched it and it's a fascinating piece. It's got kind of open scored stuff. Interesting notation, string orchestra. So again, it's one of those pieces I refer to when I'm just trying to find unique string sounds or string notation. I'll go to this piece. Now we move on to the Mahlers, and there's two, which I'm very glad to say. We've got both Alma Mahler, so her four lead. This is an orchestration of four of her songs, which I got to perform a couple of years ago with the fabulous soprano Teresa Ingrilli. They're beautiful songs. The orchestration's quite interesting in them. So I did it with a community orchestra. So if you're looking for a really solid, beautiful set of songs for a soprano that happen to be by a woman composer with a very interesting story behind them, Alma Mahler for lead, really cool. And then, of course, I've got a lot of Mahler. He's very important. Actually, surprisingly, don't have as much as I thought. Got Mahler's Fourth and Mahler's First and Second Symphonies. The Fourth is really important to me. I think that was the first Mahler I ever listened to. So that's why that's sort of really important to me. And 1 and 2 are just sort of works that you need to know. You need to study, like conductor, composer, seminal works that you should have in your collection. And then I have this delightful old Universal edition of a song of Mahler's. So I play it from time to time. I wish I had more of his piano music. I would love to get to know the piano music, because again, you can look at like the songs in particular and analyze how he took a piano score and orchestrated it, which I find really interesting, going back to what we were saying about music theatre before. So that's my Mahler collection. Not as exhaustive as I thought I had. I mentioned before when I was talking about Don Banks, Richard Mille, and I have one Richard Mille piece in my collection, and that's Las Albarades, which is a beautiful little trio for flute, violin, horn, and piano. It's a really, really cool piece. One of his sort of seminal works when he was going into more free kind of atonal style of composition. Very seminal in that respect in Australia. And again, a composer that his work, Incredible Floridas, gets performed quite regularly, but a lot of his other stuff just isn't done as much as it should, I think. So Las Alborades, I've done it with Forest Collective. We should try and do it again. And this is a curious piece. I can't remember. It's called Impressions. It's by Uzko Meriglianen. Apologies to all my Finnish friends out there. I have completely mispronounced that. I'll put the title and the name of this person up somewhere. I don't know where I got this score from, and I have found a recording of it, and it was beautiful. It's a beautiful little piece from 1965. I can't tell you much more. I've got a few notes in here. Wrote a string quartet, went through a lot of 12-tone stuff, worked prominently as a conductor. So yeah, be cool to investigate a little bit more of the Finnish composers that we don't hear a lot of here in Australia. Missy Mazzulli, interesting American composer. I've got her opera here, Breaking the Waves. I've got the piano score. Opera Australia performed it recently-ish, a couple of years ago here in Melbourne. It's a fascinating piece. It's an incredible film, heart-wrenching, absolutely heart-wrenching story. So an opera well worth your time to look into. And then I adore Mendelssohn. I only have one piece here, which is his Calm Sea, Prosperous Journey Overture, which I've conducted a few times, actually. And it's a great piece. It's a really brilliant piece. Again, if you're a beginner conductor out there, a great one for your community orchestra, a great one for your recital. And it's just a fun, good piece, good solid play. And now a work that's probably the most important score I have in my collection, which is a copy of the Turangalila Symphony by Olivier Messiaen. It's a monster, like as you can see. It's for piano and orchestra. It's a work that changed my life. I was 16, 17, and every Friday I would go to the local shopping centre and spend my pocket money on buying a Naxos CD. And I would buy a composer that I wouldn't really know about. Like I remember buying a Kurt Weill symphonies. You know, we think of Kurt Weill as a music theatre composer, but I bought this CD of his First and Second Symphony. And I think it came with a free CD or there was, you know, a little package or something. And on it were like 10 great 20th century orchestral works released by Naxos, you know. And one of it was the fifth movement from this monumental piece. And I remember hearing it and going, what is this? It changed my mind. It changed my life. It completely rethought. It made me rethink how music can operate, what music can be. I remember running downstairs and forcing my mum to listen to it. And her being like, yeah, cool, great, this sounds cool. Me being like, you don't understand, this is like, I have found the thing that like my life needs to be about. And so from then on, it is a work that has always intrigued me and that I have always strived to get an even slight tiny little bit in the shadow of this work. There are peppered throughout many of my important pieces that I've written references or suggestions of this work in certain ways, the pitch material, certain melodies I quote from it. It is a really important piece to me and a composer that is really seminal to the way that I see and feel about the world, Olivier Messiaen. Just absolutely incredible music. And after he wrote this, he went on and wrote even wilder music. The music just is so unique and so special. So very special place in my heart, this score, and it's often one sitting on my music stand. Okay, the next round of M's are a bit out of order. I've got this score to Massenet's Manon in a beautiful old edition that's got some stunning old calligraphy in it. It is old, this score. I don't know where I got it, an op shop probably. But the funny thing about it, Massenet, French composer, Manon, French opera, it's in English. The score is in English. So it's kind of useless, but it's kind of delightful as well. I don't know if it's come from some daggy, choral society, some operatic society has performed it at some point. But there you go. If you ever need an English translation of Manon from about 100 years ago, I've got one lying around. So hit me up. Monteverdi. Love Monteverdi. I've got two works of Monteverdi in my collection. L'Orfeo, often credited as the first opera. There were more operas written before L'Orfeo, but it's the one that sort of survived the test of time. Very seminal work on mine. I have a major work about Orpheus, so I reference the libretto for this in that work, and a lot of the not musically reference it too much, but it's an important piece to me. So L'Orfeo, and also Poppaea, Coronation of Poppaea, which I had the pleasure of conducting about back in 2019. I did a production of that, and it is an amazing work, an amazing story, about the Emperor Nero and his wife and his behavior and just wild ancient Rome stuff, and a fantastic piece of music, a fantastic piece of political theatre compared to a fantastic piece of mythological theatre. So Monteverdi is a composer you just need to know, in my opinion. And then we move on to the great master, Mozart. And I said before that I don't have much Bach, and I don't have much Beethoven, and I don't have much Haydn, I don't have much Brahms, but I got a lot of Mozart. Mozart is my guy. Maybe it's about the fact that he wrote lots of vocal music, that is the Mozart thing. I have a strong affinity with writing concerti and that kind of soloist and orchestra, which is very Mozart. So anyway, I got a lot of Mozart. I got the clarinet concerto, which I was a clarinetist, so I played it. I've got a beautiful edition of the Requiem, which I bought in Vienna. I went to Edition Peters, the shop, and I wanted to buy an text of a composer from the city, like I said before about Martinu, and so I bought this really lovely edition of the Mozart Requiem. La Clemenza di Tito, his opera, which is funnily enough one of my favorite pieces, one of my favorite operas. People going to go, what, you like that? But the music is really cool. There's something about the politics of this work that really appeals to me. I was in it when I was in high school. I was in the chorus, so it was a first time kind of hearing Mozart in the flesh. So yeah, love La Clemenza di Tito. Magic Flute. So this is probably the only opera where I have both the vocal score and the full score. I bought the full score in Germany. Again, I wanted to have a really nice edition of it. And I've done Magic Flute a number of times, so I have a very sort of well-worn vocal and piano score and full score of Magic Flute, and it is probably my favorite opera. I said that about La Clemenza di Tito. It's one of my favorite operas. It's out of the famous operas. It's probably the one that I go to the most. And then I have a lovely old vocal score of Così fan tutte. I'm a singer as well. I don't really talk about that very much, and I don't really perform that much as a singer, but I do sing. I have lessons, and I give lessons, and occasionally I sing in public. And I love singing Così. Così is one of those pieces that, it's a tricky one in the modern day and all of that stuff, and we really need to rethink about how we stage it and what it's about. but it's got damn good music in it, and it's really great for singers, and it's a great little piece to leaf through. And if you're a singing teacher and you've got a student who wants to try opera, it's a useful one because there is a lot of arias in there that only go for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, or little incidental arietas and things. And so it's a useful piece to get students started with something that they can sink their teeth into that isn't too massive. And the final part of my Mozart collection is also it's also Mendelssohn, but it's a compendium. So it's a fascinating. It just fascinates me, this book. So as you can see, it's like all kind of screwed out. Again, when I was in Bratislava and I bought the Martinu, I think I was in a music shop and I found this, and it was probably a couple of euros, and I just bought it. And it is, someone has compiled the piano reductions of like a couple of Mozart piano concertos and Mendelssohn, 2 of the Mendelssohn piano concertos. And, you know, you leaf through it. It isn't very heavily marked up, but there's a few moments where you get some insight into the soloist of who owned this book, and it's just a lovely old object, you know. That's part of the thing I like with just finding music in shops is just having this kind of old school way, and that someone has gone out of their way and bound and like probably used this score, or it was in a library or something. I don't know. It's just really cool, and now it lives with me in Australia. Okay, peas. I'm going to do peas in 2 lots because they're a bit all over the shop. It's like where my library breaks shelves. So the first lot of peas I've got is Puccini. I have 2 Puccinis, Tosca and La Bohème. Essential listening, essential reading if you're a lover of opera and a conductor of opera and a composer. This score of Tosca, I mean, again, from an orchestration perspective, Puccini is a master, and he just does this thing where the voice is here and the orchestra's around it, and it just works. It just balances everything. You hear the voice perfectly. The textures are brilliant, and yet he still is able to do really interesting things with the orchestra. And Tosca is a great example of that. Bohème, of course, is just the most beautiful thing. I have just a daggy old piano score. I got it reasonably recently because I just thought I need a copy of this. You know, it's a seminal work. I'd love to be able to conduct it one day, please. Yeah, what more to say about Puccini? Master. Then I've got some quite an interesting mixed bag here. Purcell, Dido and Aeneas. I've done Dido and Aeneas before, not as a conductor, but I've sung in the chorus for it. It's a fabulous opera, a fabulous little opera. A great my first time at the opera if you're attending or if you're wanting to put one on. It's a great little first time opera. It's not too long. It's in English. Yeah, a great piece. And as you'll notice, I have a penchant for Baroque opera. Not that I have a huge amount in the collection, but enough. Now, this is a really interesting piece. Andre Previn's A Streetcar Named Desire, which was like super popular. Like when I was at high school, it was being performed a lot. It's about when it was premiered. It was written for Renee Fleming and I think San Francisco Opera. And it's a great piece. It's got jazz vibes in it. It's obviously super dramatic. I think it's really well adapted for the stage. I find Andre Previn really interesting. He's a conductor-composer. He wrote film music. He wrote musicals. He wrote popular music. Yeah, an interesting guy and a really, really beautiful opera. And I remember finding this score at a bookshop that no longer exists. It would be near the Port Phillip Arcade, which got torn down for the Melbourne Metro project. There used to be a really good secondhand bookshop there. And I would have bought this when I was doing La Clemenza di Tito in high school. And I remember buying this and I'd seen like ads on ABC must have done a broadcast of like the Renee Fleming or something. And I was like, oh, I know that, and I've seen the score, and oh, how cool. And so I bought it. And yeah, it's just a piece I've loved ever since seeing that broadcast. And then I've got a piece here, Siraseth Pantura-umporn, who is a Thai composer, a piece called Matter Antimatter, and it is a beast of a piece. And we prepared it for Forest Collective for a concert, and it was during the COVID times, and this was such a hard piece. We'd done so much work on it, really, really dense, but really sophisticated and intelligent piece, and the concert had to be cancelled, and another concert had to be cancelled, and so we took like bits from both concerts and made a new concert, and unfortunately this piece couldn't be programmed for whatever reason. I think we just decided that we didn't have the time to get it back to the level that we had originally had it. And so unfortunately this piece had to be cut. But I'd like to do it again. So Suraseth, if you're out there, one day let's try and make that a reality. And then another, I seem to have lots of orchestral choral works, considering I very rarely am in that space. But Poulenc, Stabat Mater, a beautiful, beautiful piece. Composer, again, like people love Poulenc, and you do hear about people doing Poulenc, but sometimes he's just not like thought of, you know what I mean, as the number one guy. But Poulenc, yeah, brilliant composer from a harmony perspective, great to study. He wrote great vocal music. Yeah, a really, really strong work from the Stabat Mater. Okay, the final piece I've got is quite a lot of Prokofiev. So I've got Prokofiev here, Symphony 5, Symphony 7, and then one of these like Kalmus editions that has like a whole load of stuff in it. Classical Symphony, Lieutenant Kiej Suite, Peter and the Wolf, Alexander Nevsky Cantata. The Nevsky Cantata, if you don't know it, because it's not the most like well-known piece, is a really cool piece of music and well worth your time if you're looking for a cool piece. Again, I think it's with choir. Yeah, maybe men's choir, something like that. Really, really fascinating piece. Prokofiev, like a composer that people ream off all the time, but how often do you see people do the more obscure Prokofievs? Prokofiev 5, a damn amazing symphony that does get done a lot. And like, I remember hearing this for the first time live, and the last movement of this piece is like up there with Tarangalila. It's one of those works that's really, really important in my musical life and musical thinking. The 7th is a very strange piece, and yeah, worth looking into if you don't know it. But yeah, Prokofiev, a guy that should get more airtime. Like some of the weirder stuff should get more airtime because, you know, we get Peter and the Wolf and we get the ballets, but, you know, I want to hear some Nevsky, you know, the Nevsky Cantata. Bring it on. Okay, we're on to R, and a composer that is up there with Messiaen for me. I talked about Boulez, I talked about Ligeti, I talked about Messiaen as being really important to me. Ravel as the other one that's like super influential on me. And these three works that I have in my collection are very important to me. The only one that is missing from the collection is Daphne and Chloe. But what I have here I do adore. So his Scheherazade, gorgeous, gorgeous work for voice and orchestra. You know, immaculately orchestrated, of course, as we know about Ravel. Beautiful setting of the French, just immaculate, perfect, no notes. I have, and nobody tell any of the publishers, but I have a photocopied folder of the Rhapsody Espagnole, which a piece that isn't done all that often in the annals of Ravel works, but definitely worth a listen. It's a piece that we did at university. So I heard it was one of the works when I first got to uni. We were in first year and the orchestra was playing Rhapsody Espagnole, and I was observing the rehearsals, and I hadn't really heard an orchestra before. Like I'd been to a couple of gigs when I was a kid, but other than that, I'd only ever played in like wind band. And to hear a proper orchestra, all the bells and whistles, and playing Ravel, it just, yeah. So I had to photocopy that to put it in a folder. And then I had the luxury at university of conducting his Trois Poèmes de Mallarmé, which are these beautiful, beautiful works. And this is a piece that does not get done that often. It's very odd. It's like 2 flutes, 2 clarinets, strings, voice, and piano. So a great piece of chamber music, a great one for a uni conductor, like a conductor who's studying, who's wanting to get some time with a singer. It's reasonably straightforward. You've got a small ensemble to work with. So yeah, gorgeous, gorgeous piece. And then my other R, this is a really curious work and a composer that has hung around in my life quite a bit. And it's Aribert Reimann. You might not have heard of him. He's a German composer. He died reasonably recently. Forest Collective has performed a number of his smaller works. He's got pieces for, there's like a bass flute singer work that we've done quite a bit. We're doing some songs of his in an upcoming concert. But this is an opera of his based on Bernarda Alba. So the Bernarda Alba House, which is a famous play by Garcia Lorca. This is an opera adaptation of it. And it has this wild orchestra of like 3 or 4 pianos that have to be detuned and this massive orchestra. And I found it in an op shop. And not just that, but I found it in an op shop in like Bentley, which, if you know Melbourne, is like the most white bread, middle of nowhere suburb. To find this very obscure opera in, like, amazing. And it was, just sitting there for $5 or whatever. And I can't find a recording of it anywhere. So if anyone knows of the Reimann Bernarda Alba House, knows of a recording of it somewhere, please let me know, because I would love to finally study this piece properly. Okay, we're into the next monster letter, which is S. And S is like from here to like here. It's a beast. So bear with me. I'm going to try and do this quickly because I've got a lot to get through. Peter Sculthorpe, Australian composer, absolutely seminal. I have hopefully I'm not bashing the microphone too much. I have in my collection Sun Music 1. If you don't know these pieces, if you're not from Australia, because they don't get, I imagine they've not performed overseas really at all. If you want to know like meat and potatoes Australian music, listen to the Sun Music series. Sun Music 1, I think, is the best one. The other ones are great. Like there's Sun Music 2, maybe even 3. They're all fantastic works. But yeah, check out Peter Sculthorpe. Earthcry is the other piece that gets done reasonably often. Again, I have a photocopy of it, sorry. Both really fantastic works. So if you don't know Sculthorpe, if you're not from Australia, most likely, check out. There's some good pieces to start with. Worth studying if you're a composer. Kaya Sariaho, another really seminal composer to me who passed away very recently. I don't actually have a lot of her scores, but I do have 2 small chamber works, Ariel's Hall and Miranda's Lament, which I've done with Forest Collective a long time ago. They are extracts from a larger cycle of poetry from The Tempest. If you don't know Sariaho, listen to her music, like incredible, life-changing stuff. Okay, composer that is very important to me. I feel like I'm saying this every time I pull out a score. Schoenberg, Arnold Schoenberg, Forest Collective. We've performed a lot of Schoenberg, primarily his Pierrot Lunaire, which we've tried to stage so many times. We did an amazing film version, which I'll link down in the description. We only did a bit of it. So seminal work for voice and ensemble. If you don't know it, you gotta listen to this piece. It is the sound of the early 20th century before the First World War, in my mind. It is Europe, trying to figure its shit out before the war starts. And then on the other end is this piece, A Survivor from Warsaw, which is Europe trying to get its shit together after the Second World War. And it is a text, it's a speaker, another work with speaker in it, and the speaker is talking about their experience in the Warsaw Ghetto during the Nazi occupation of Poland. It's an incredible work. It is a testament to hope, to art in the darkest of places, the power of Schoenberg to do experimental, weird and unique things and to tell incredible stories with a language that people fob off as just being odd and strange, and I love it. Schubert, you've got to have some Schubert in your collection. I have this lovely, look at this, gorgeous score, Schubert songs, really old. And I often sit at the piano and play these. It's so, look at this, sticky tape, crusty old score. So, got to have some Schubert songs in your collection. And you've also got to have Schumann songs in your collection. I love Schumann, adore Schumann, and I adore his songs most of all. And so I'm often found late at night playing my way through a little collection of his vocal music. I've got a collection of Woman's Love, Frau Leben und Leben, his song cycle, which I adore. And I've got his Second Symphony, which I've conducted, and I've also conducted his Third Symphony, but I don't seem to have the score for that. Very difficult, very weird works. Schumann's often fobbed off as being a bad orchestrator. I don't think it's bad, it's just kind of difficult. It's like dense, it's really thick. You kind of have to figure out your way through all the texture. I then have a work by my teacher, Joanna Selleck, an amazing Melbourne-based composer, a work called Aya, which Aya is a Greek nymph. I premiered this work in 2011. We then re-performed it a couple of years after that with Forest Collective, and we definitely should have another go of it at some point. If you don't know Jo, she writes really, really beautiful music, and She's a great teacher. So shout out to Joe Selleck. I then have, funnily enough, this book that I found in an op shop, and it's Lord of the Rings, and it's like moments from the score, which is an incredible score, right, by Howard Ashman, and it's really daggy. It's got like photos of the movie. I adore Lord of the Rings. If you don't know, I'm actually like really into Tolkien. But what's quite fun is that like it must have come with a CD. There's no CD in it, but it must come with a CD, and it's got like little click tracks that you can like play along with the CD, which I love. So yeah, again, another one. Howard Ashman though, like Howard Shaw, who wrote the music, he has a really, really sophisticated harmonic language. So studying some of these pieces and other pieces of his film music, really great for harmonic inspiration. Then, of course, you've got to have some Stravinsky in your life. And I have here, of course, you've got to have a copy of Rite of Spring. I have the whole trilogy, actually. Rite of Spring, Firebird with no cover that's falling apart, and Petrushka. So I've had the pleasure of conducting Firebird a number of times. Again, if you're a young conductor, it's one of those pieces that crops up a lot in masterclasses and auditions. So you just got to have a copy ready to go. And then the Petrushka I have, this is actually a piano duet version. So one thing I do when I'm trying to study scores is I'll try and play along with recordings, and I'll pick like the oboe line or whatever, just to kind of start hearing sounds that I might not ordinarily be listening to in recordings or when I'm studying. And again, piano reductions are kind of useful for that too. So now with the like IMSLP, you can find so many reductions of lots of older pieces, and I'll just play along like the bass line or parts of pieces that, like I said, I don't normally listen out to. And just as a good challenge to my ear and to my like engaging with the tempos and things like that. So I often do that with this Petrushka, because obviously Petrushka's damn hard to play. And then Rite of Spring. I mean, like, this is, I leaf through this constantly. Like, I'm always looking at this for inspiration, as of course, like, seminal work. It's got to be in rotation. And the last for this little batch of S's is a delightful work by composer Ethel Smythe, British composer who's often like talked about because she did a lot of work as a suffragette. And this is a gorgeous work called Nacht, Sleepless Dreams, which I did with a choir a couple of years ago. It is for choir and orchestra. We just did it with piano. It's got a baritone solo in it. It's a really gorgeous piece of music, very sophisticated, and that kind of interesting, I was talking about it with Delius and a little bit with Elgar, that interesting kind of English turn of the century before the First World War. There's kind of a fascinating period there with the sort of this English sentiment, but the harmony is starting to get really adventurous and interesting. So yeah, love Ethel. Okay, the next round of S's, again, I feel like I'm saying this every time I pull a score out. These are seminal works that are really important to me. Stephen Sondheim, amazing Broadway composer. I have a compendium of his songs. I have the full vocal scores to Passion, such an underrated musical, Company, seminal musical, Follies. These two and the compendium are really special to me because I bought them when I was deep in my music theatre phase at high school. So they're scores that I've, taken with me to every share house, everywhere I've lived. They've followed me around. And they're great works. They're great songs. If you want to learn how to set English, if you want to learn how to write songs, what I did is I took Sondheim songs and I just rewrote them. I got in there and I fiddled around with the structure, fiddled around with the harmony or whatever, and you learn so much by doing that. Passion, one of his later works, and compared to his other works, often not as performed, but man, this is a beautiful piece of music. And it's like his Sweeney Todd. It's it bridges the opera world, it bridges the music theatre world. It's deeply dramatic. The orchestrations are stunning. If you don't know Passion, I would recommend you listen to it, look out for it. There are productions online that you can easily watch. And of course, I keep with my scores, even though they're not actually music, but I bought during COVID this collection of Sondheim. It's called Finishing the Hat, Look, I Made a Hat. And it is these incredible books that, I think he was approached to write a memoir, and he didn't really want to do that, but he was like, maybe I'll write about my pieces. And so these books, one is like up until, I think one is till Sunday in the Park with George, and then the other one are his works from Sunday in the Park with George onwards. And it's like collections of his lyrics that he wrote that weren't published or that were cut or that changed, or songs that didn't make it to shows, and stories that go along with that and all of that. And they're beautiful books. They're just beautiful objects. But if you're interested in musical theatre, if you're interested in opera, in any kind of like, even just writing, if you're interested in words, they're worth looking into. But particularly if you're interested in the dramatic musical theatre, seminal books to read. And they're really entertaining, and they're full of beautiful pictures and anecdotes and stories that you wouldn't otherwise know. Okay, the final stretch of S's. Richard Strauss. Again, here I go again. One of the seminal composers I most love, blah, blah, blah. And again, I don't have many scores by him. I've got two works. Alpine Symphony, which I bought this because I was assisting a conductor on it, but I never actually got to conduct it. But what a piece of music. If you do not know Strauss, if you do not know this piece, you've got to listen to the Alpine Symphony. It is an amazing work. And this one I have conducted. It's an aria from his opera Ariadne Naxos. And that is a lie. I swear I've got another Strauss score in here. Maybe it is out of order, but I do have the piano score, or maybe it's here. Yes, it is here. I have the piano score for Elektra. So Strauss and opera are synonymous. If you're starting out in opera, I would be reading the librettos that Hofmannsthal wrote for Strauss's operas. They are the best, compared probably Da Ponte by Mozart's librettists are the only ones comparable in quality. People often go for Salome. Yes, Salome is an incredible work. Elektra, not as well known, but my goodness, what a piece of music. It is guttural. It is raw. I did a whole video about Strauss, and I talked about Elektra for probably half of it. I'll link that video up here. But yeah, love Strauss. Love, love, love Strauss. And then I've got another Strauss, Charles Strauss, and he wrote Bye Bye Birdie, the musical Bye Bye Birdie. And again, I think Charles Strauss recently just died, like a couple of months ago. And this is a copy that is from my high school. I stole it on my last day of school. It is the Cheltenham High School vocal score for when they did Bye Bye Birdie, probably back in the 80s or something. And I was like, I'm having that. A fantastic composer. Another great musical theatre composer. He wrote a musical I adore called Rags with Stephen Schwartz, who wrote Wicked. Bye Bye Birdie, of course, is a seminal work that he wrote. Annie. Yeah, so two completely different Strausses. Strauss with an O and Strauss with an A. Okie smoky, we're on to T's. Another seminal composer. Oh, Takemitsu, Japanese composer. I actually have quite a bit of Takemitsu because I've been to Japan a number of times and I've bought scores there. So I have a few piano works, Rain Tree Sketch 2, both beautiful works. The harmony of this man's work is just so beautiful. So I often spend time, if I'm looking for inspiration, there's so many wells of interesting harmonic relationships and material in Takemitsu's piano writing, so I often play those for inspo. This piece, Rain Coming, Takemitsu was obsessed with water and rain, and all his pieces most of his pieces relate to water in some way. This is a work that I would love to conduct one day. It's a beautiful chamber orchestra work, I think, for London Chamber Orchestra, London Sinfonietta, sorry. So yeah, a master orchestrator, and a work that we've done with Forest Collective, Waves. This is a really fascinating piece for two trombones, horn, percussion, and solo clarinet, with like lots of spatial effects, and the trombonists have to play into drums and things. Really interesting. So yeah, adore Takemitsu. I then have a work that Forest Collective commissioned by the fantastic New Zealand composer Micah Thompson. It's called Otaki Songs, and it's a work for solo bass flute and ensemble, which Forest Collective performed. So shout out to Micah, writes stunningly good music, and you should listen to our recording of this up on the Forest Collective SoundCloud. And then I have, like I was saying about the Massenet, an English version of Manon, I have an English version of Eugene Onegin by Tchaikovsky. In what world will an English-only vocal score of Eugene Onegin become useful? Though now I think about it, it's actually kind of really useful because I certainly can't speak Russian. But yeah, it's like never been opened, this book. I got it from a book sale. So it's an opera that I love and I really like, but I've never really listened to it seriously or studied it. So maybe this is a good tool and a good reason for me to get into it. It's the only Tchaikovsky I have in my collection. I've sort of said a lot of like things about not loving Tchaikovsky in the past, but he has grown on me, I've got to say, the older I've gotten. There's something about the schmaltziness that I've never been able to get behind, but I think I've had to grow into that. I really like his vocal music, and the symphonies are amazing. Don't come for me. I love conducting his music. I just don't sit around and listen to it. Sorry about it. Okay, V's. I've got just two pieces by Philip Venables, who is a British composer. Both works we've done with Forest Collective. Fuck Forever, which is quite a funny little 6-word opera for speaker and ensemble, and a piece called Fight Music, which I think is an extract from another opera of his for like solo, cello, and ensemble. So we've played both of those. Yeah, really interesting composer. He's written some really cool operas. So if you're interested in contemporary opera, Philip Venables is a composer worth looking into. I have another V work. I didn't pull it out properly, and it is so interesting. And that is Claude Vivier, Copernicus. Vivier is fascinating French-Canadian composer, and I'm not going to talk too much about the story because he has this there's a story about his death which is just bizarre and sad. So yeah, look it up for yourselves. I won't give it away here. But this opera, Copernicus, it's about Copernicus, but it's also about Mozart, and it's about Buddha and like Mao and like all of these people. The Queen of the Night is in it and stuff. It's this sort of wild work. And there is a amazing performance of it on YouTube of a company doing it, like with the orchestra playing it by memory. Like it's like chamber ensemble and singers. It is like the sort of music that will change the way you look at the world. So Copernicus by Claude Vivier. Check it out. Okay, we're into the final stretch. We're into W, and we've got some meaty scores for W. So we've got Vaughan Williams, a piece of his called Benedice, which I've tried to do with a number of choirs, and it's just never worked out. I've had this score forever. I bought it in high school, like from an op shop or something. And it's a beautiful little piece. I don't like love all of Vaughan Williams's music. Granted, I probably haven't given him enough time of day. I love the C Symphony. I love Lark Ascending is gorgeous, but I haven't given him enough time, and I should give him a little bit more time. But this is a great little piece for orchestra. It would be a good one for community choir. So great little piece by Vaughan Williams. And then my only other W before we get to some real monsters is Anton Webern's Variations, Opus 30, which is, again, like if you want to refresh on how to be simple and clear and precise with your music, listen to Webern and really see what he does with the most simplest of resources. I'll leave it at that. All right, Wagner. I'm not a Wagner, nut. Like there are people that go all over the world for Wagner. Like I've seen Wagner operas. I've watched The Ring Cycle a number of times. Like I really enjoy Wagner, and there are moments where I'm like, yes, Wagner. And then there's parts of me, that really cringe at who he was. And there's some moments in the operas that are stupid. I did a whole video about Wagner. I'll link that here. But a seminal composer, like you can't escape him in classical music. And I've got some of the blockbusters. So Tristan and Isolde, which I have in a vocal score. It's still a monster. A great piece to study. It is a beast. But, I mean, it's almost a history of the 19th century in itself. And then I've got two bits of the Ring Cycle. I found these reasonably recently. They're probably my newest additions to the collection. I have a complete orchestral score of Die Walküre, and I've got an orchestral score of Siegfried. I love Siegfried. I think it's my favorite part. There's something about the crazy Helden tenor stuff, all the, bashing of the anvil. I love that stuff musically. I don't know. I think musically it's the work that I most gravitate to, aside from the Ende Götterdämmerung, of course. I do love Valkyrie. I mean, Valkyrie, I think dramatically, for me, Valkyrie is the best structured part of the Ring cycle. Like it's the one, to me, like, I think because you get like the 3 different acts, they're so different, you get different parts of the plot. I don't know, I think Valkyrie for me is the most dramatically satisfying part of the cycle, and Siegfried is the most musically satisfying part. Having said that, though, there's the dragon stuff. Anyway, like, amazing music, and you know, you sometimes just to feel inspired, I pick this up. You know what I mean? Pick up a score like this, or like the Gounod Faust, and just go, this is like, he sat and he orchestrated all of this by hand. Like, when you're complaining about your parts and Sibelius not extracting properly, just listen to that. It's like 3.5 hours. Like, that changes my tune. And the other one, which is Wagner adjacent, is Webern. And I love Weber, sorry. Carl Maria von Weber. And this is, again, it must be the same publisher as the Tchaikovsky on Jagen. It's Die Freischutz, and it has English translation, but it also has a German in there. So weirdly that this is German and that one only has English but no Russian. Anyway, and this is a fantastic opera. Again, sometimes cops a bit of, like, some people don't like it, but I think it's fabulous. I think it's got great music. I think it's the overture is one of the overtures. If you are a young conductor, you've got to go watch Carlos Kleiber conducting it. It is, you know, a masterclass in what music is and who we are and the joy of music and what conductors aspire to be. And Die Freischutz, when it's done well, is a really fantastic work. We have come to the end of my collection with the final score, which is the letter Y, which is a composer that I love, Maury Yeston, another musical theatre composer. And this is a work called Titanic. It is a musical that came out the same year as the film, and so often gets confused or thought of as an adaptation of the film, but has nothing to do with it. And it contains within it the story of 3 different kind of couples on the ship: first class, second class, and third class. And it's just an absolutely gorgeous musical. The orchestrations for it are superb. And I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, it is the reason that the Tony Awards have an orchestration award. They brought it in to give to Jonathan Tunick, who made the orchestrations for it. Like, they instigated the award because the orchestrations were so good on this. He orchestrates it in a way that is so... captures the period so well. I think, like, I've talked about how much I love Ravel and Elgar and that kind of like turn of the century period. This musical captures that sentiment so well. There are moments that are very Elgar. There are moments that have ragtime. There are moments that feel like Vaughan Williams. You know, it's interesting. He captures this period in time musically so well. As a piece of drama and theatre, I mean, we know how it's going to end, obviously, which doesn't help the thing. The book by Peter Stone is really good. I was an assistant conductor on a production of it a number of years ago, which is why I have it in the collection. It's a beautiful show, but like, it's challenging because there's so much going on, right? You've got the ship, you've got the captain, you've got the designer, you've got the owner, then you've got all these couples that were created for the show. The names are people who were on the ship, but they're not real stories. They're stories that were dramatized and created for the musical. So it's not like the greatest piece of theatre ever, but it is a really beautiful show, and it has some really strong moments in it. So that is Titanic, and that is Y, the letter Y. Okay, what a monster of a video, and what a monster of a period of talking about the scores that I own. I hope this was interesting to somebody. I don't know. It's interesting to me. It's really nice to kind of go back through my archive of what I've got collected and kind of go, oh, that's right, I've got that thing, and oh, I should listen to that. Oh, I haven't thought about this, and why do I have this English on Eugene Onegin and no Russian? So thanks for coming on this journey with me, and look out for the next video. Bye!